This is the Golden Gate. It's the East Gate. It's known as the Mercy Gate to Jerusalem. As you can tell, it's been sealed up for a long, long time.
There are lots of urban legends in Jerusalem. This one might be the most important. It has to do with the Golden Gate and the fact that it is closed. Why is it closed?
For more than 5 centuries, a single gate in Jerusalem was never supposed to open. Sealed behind heavy stone, guarded by prophecy, and feared by rulers, the Golden Gate stood in silence, waiting. But now, something has changed. If this moment is real, it may signal the beginning of a prophecy written thousands of years ago. At exactly 9:35 in the morning, an event unfolded in Jerusalem that many believed would not happen until the return of the Messiah. A gate sealed for over 500 years, locked by stone, mortar, history, and ancient belief, opened. There were no announcements, no permission, no official explanation. And while the world's media remained quiet, those who witnessed it stood frozen, realizing they might be watching something long foretold, prophecy unfolding in real time. If this is your first time here, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you understand the times we are living in. The structure at the center of this event is known as the Eastern Gate, also called the Golden Gate or the Gate of Mercy. It faces directly toward the Mount of Olives, overlooking the Kidron Valley. Its position alone places it at the very heart of biblical geography, where history, faith, and prophecy converge. But the significance of this gate goes far beyond its stones or its location. For more than 500 years, it has remained completely sealed, blocked by massive slabs of stone, reinforced with mortar, and deliberately left untouched by generation after generation who understood exactly what it represented. This was never just an ordinary gate closed for safety or preservation. It was sealed by design. According to both Jewish and Christian tradition, the Eastern Gate carries a unique prophetic purpose. It is believed to be the gate through which the Messiah would one day enter Jerusalem. Because of that belief, it wasn't simply shut, it was intentionally locked away from human interference. The message was clear and widely accepted for centuries. No human hand was meant to open it. In Jewish tradition, the Eastern Gate symbolizes the future arrival of the Messiah, who would bring restoration, peace, and divine rule. For Christians, it carries an added historical weight. It is believed to be the very gate through which Jesus entered Jerusalem during his triumphal entry. Despite differences in belief, both traditions arrive at the same conclusion. This gate belongs to divine timing, not human authority. Because of that, it came to be known as the most prophetically charged gate in all of Jerusalem, set apart from every other entrance in the city walls. And century after century passed, while everything around it changed, the gate remained exactly the same, sealed, untouched, and waiting. Empires rose and collapsed. Jerusalem passed from one power to another again and again. Wars, earthquakes, invasions, and rebuilding efforts reshaped the city over centuries. Yet through it all, the Eastern Gate remained unchanged, frozen in time. No ruler dared to reopen it. No engineer attempted to repair it. Its sealed state became a living symbol of waiting for something that had not yet arrived. And over time, that long silence produced 2 very different reactions. Skeptics dismissed the prophecy, calling it symbolic, outdated, or simply impossible. They pointed to the massive stones and centuries of stillness as proof that nothing would ever happen. To them, the sealed gate was nothing more than a relic of superstition, a story preserved only by religious tradition. But believers saw something entirely different. Generation after generation held onto the same expectation. The gate would remain closed until God himself chose otherwise. Its silence was not failure, it was restraint. Its closure was not abandonment, It was anticipation. Then, the moment the Eastern Gate opened did not arrive gradually, and it came without warning. According to multiple eyewitnesses, it happened suddenly during an otherwise ordinary morning in Jerusalem. There were no announcements, no ceremonies, and no visible preparations. At 9:35 a.m., the silence that had surrounded the gate for centuries was shattered in an instant. Those standing nearby described hearing a deep, unfamiliar sound, not sharp like an explosion and not rolling like a typical earthquake. It was a heavy, resonant noise, as if something ancient had shifted beneath the stone itself. For a brief moment, the ground trembled and people stopped walking. Conversations froze mid-sentence. All eyes turned toward the eastern wall, toward the one place where nothing was ever supposed to change. Then, the stones began to shift. Massive blocks that had sealed the gate for generations cracked apart and fell away from the entrance. Witnesses later said it happened with shocking speed. What had remained fixed for more than 500 years gave way in just minutes. Dust filled the air. Some people cried out. Others stood motionless, unable to speak. A structure long believed to be immovable was no longer sealed. Several tour guides later shared the same unsettling detail. Just moments before the event, they had been explaining to visitors that the gate would remain closed until the Messiah's return. While those words were still hanging in the air, the gate began to open. For many in the crowd, the timing alone was enough to trigger panic, awe, or complete disbelief. Reactions differed, but the intensity of the moment was the same for everyone. Some witnesses began to weep. Others dropped to their knees. A few reached for their phones, trying to record something they could barely process themselves. Longtime residents of Jerusalem, people who had passed by the gate for decades without ever seeing it change, described the moment as deeply unsettling. One second, the gate was just history. The next, it was unfolding in front of them. What made the scene even more disturbing was the lack of any clear cause. There was no nearby construction, no heavy equipment, and no officials clearing the area beforehand. Security footage later confirmed that no one had approached the gate prior to the event. For many observers, the absence of human involvement was just as powerful as the opening itself. As the dust settled, a clear opening stood where solid stone had been only moments earlier. People stared in silence. Some whispered prayers. Others kept asking the same question over and over. How could this happen? A gate sealed by intention, protected by centuries of history, and bound to ancient prophecy had changed, without warning and without explanation. And yet, what witnesses saw that morning was only the surface. The deeper questions, how it happened, why it happened, and what it might mean, were only beginning to emerge. Stay with us, because the details surrounding how the gate opened raise even more unsettling questions, and what comes next may be even more significant than the moment itself. To understand why the opening of the Eastern Gate carries such enormous weight, we first have to look back at why it was sealed in the first place. This was not the result of neglect or decay. It was a deliberate act, made with full awareness of prophecy and fear of its fulfillment. In the 16th century, when Jerusalem was under Ottoman control, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent ordered the Eastern Gate to be permanently sealed. Massive stones were fitted tightly across the entrance and reinforced with thick mortar, ensuring the gate could not be reopened easily, if at all. This was not a standard defensive move. Other gates in Jerusalem remained in use. This one was treated differently. Historical records and religious traditions point to the same motivation. Suleiman was aware of the Jewish belief that the Messiah would enter Jerusalem through the Eastern Gate. By sealing it, he believed he could prevent that prophecy from ever being fulfilled. To reinforce this effort, a Muslim cemetery was constructed directly in front of the gate, based on the belief that a priestly Messiah would not pass through a burial ground. In effect, human authority attempted to interrupt divine expectation. What followed would become one of the most striking ironies in religious history. The gate remained exactly as Scripture had described it, closed, untouched, and waiting. Across the centuries, the words of Ezekiel 44:2 continued to echo, "This gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter by it." The very seal placed upon the gate became evidence that the prophecy was still being taken seriously. Century after century passed. Different empires ruled Jerusalem. Political power shifted again and again. Earthquakes shook the land. Wars damaged the city walls. Yet through every upheaval, the Eastern Gate remained sealed. Even during the Six-Day War in 1967, Israeli authorities reportedly chose not to unseal it, warned by religious leaders that only the Messiah was meant to open that gate. To skeptics, the sealed gate became proof that the prophecy had failed. They argued that a gate blocked by stone could never fulfill its purpose. Over time, the belief spread that the prophecy must be symbolic rather than literal. How could anyone enter through a gate that no longer functioned? But Scripture consistently reminds us that human barriers do not limit divine action. Isaiah 45:2 declares, "I will break in pieces the gates of bronze and cut through the bars of iron." The message is unmistakable. What humanity seals, God can open. What appears permanent to human power is temporary to divine authority. For more than 500 years, the sealed Eastern Gate stood as a monument to human control, an attempt to lock prophecy into silence. Yet at the same time, it served as a reminder that history does not move independently of God's timing. The longer the gate remained closed, the greater its significance became. Human rulers believed they were preventing fulfillment. In reality, they were preparing the stage. Because the longer it stayed shut, the clearer the message grew. When this gate finally opened, it would not be due to accident, erosion, or permission, but by a moment no human power could stop. The Eastern Gate is not important because of its age or its architecture. Its significance doesn't come from its size or age, but from what Scripture says about it, and how faithfully those words have been preserved across time. Long before human hands ever sealed the gate, it had already been defined by prophecy. The clearest passage comes from Ezekiel 44, where the prophet describes a gate facing east that would remain shut because the Lord, the God of Israel, had entered through it. The text makes it clear that no man would open this gate and that it was reserved for the prince. For centuries, Jewish scholars understood this as a direct reference to the Messiah. The gate was not closed because it was forgotten. It was closed because it was set apart. That belief shaped how the gate was treated throughout history. Unlike other entrances into Jerusalem, it was never repurposed. No ruler turned it into a marketplace. No army forced it open for strategic advantage. Prophecy placed a boundary around it, one that even the most powerful leaders hesitated to cross. Whether they believed the prophecy or feared it, the outcome was the same. The gate remained sealed. For Christians, this prophecy carries an added layer of meaning. The Eastern Gate is traditionally identified as the gate through which Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, fulfilling the words of Zechariah 9:9. "See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, humble and riding on a donkey." That moment is understood as a partial fulfillment, humble, quiet, and temporary. But Scripture also looks ahead to a return that will not be quiet or humble. Zechariah 14:4 describes a day when the Lord's feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, just east of Jerusalem. And the geography is important. The Mount of Olives faces only one entrance into the city, the Eastern Gate.